Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where it's our pleasure today to have as our guest Ms. Abosede Alimi. She is a director of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. Now today we want to talk with her about how people can get hold of funds or how entrepreneurs can get hold of funds to start their businesses. So welcome to the Heart of the Matter, Abosede.
Thank you very much.
If I can call you that.
Yes.
Our governor, the governor of Lagos State, Mr. Jide Sanwo-Olu, promised in his election campaigning that by the end of his first year in office, he would have created 100,000 jobs. Now, in the background is the fact that Nigeria's unemployment rate is humongous, 33.5%. And I think the employment rate amongst the youth is even higher.
Yes.
So how does he intend to do that?
So LSETF was set up with a very clear mandate to create jobs. And in terms of how we are doing that is to provide entrepreneurship and employment opportunities for all Lagos residents. So the most recent National Bureau of Statistics data says that the unemployment rate in Lagos reduced by 6.7%, and that was the highest across the country. As
a result of your intervention?
We will not lay claim to all of it, but we are almost certain that we had a role to play in that. So in terms of how Mr. Governor is creating jobs, there's the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, but to be honest, there's also the Ministry of Wealth Creation and Employment, and then other agencies like the Lagos State Technical Vocational Education Board, LASVEB, and the Women's Ministry. So it's a collaborative effort amongst these ministries and departments to create jobs and wealth in Lagos.
Okay, now you said it's available to all Lagos State residents. Now, couldn't this become a problem when residents of other states start flocking to Lagos mainly to benefit from this scheme? Might they not overflood the scheme with demands?
So, I mean, that's very interesting because the most recent data that we have on sort of migration into Lagos says that 85 people arrive Lagos every hour to make it their home. However, for you to be categorized as a Lagos resident, you must have a Lagos State resident registration card, right? This can be accessed at any local government area or any council development area. However, you must have a proof of address. So it's not as simple as just arriving in Lagos, whether it's through Beggar or any other entry points, and saying you'll be able to access key benefits.
So you mentioned a number of things. There's LSETF. There's also the Wealth Creation, the Ministry of Wealth Creation. What are you in LSETF doing? What's your role? How are you making an impact?
So we've approached job creation from three sort of delivery mechanisms, right? The first one is providing access and affordable finance. So when you start to think about small businesses, which all the data points to are the ones who create the most jobs, right? So if you wanted to stimulate economic growth, then you have to be supporting small businesses to grow, expand, be stable, and create jobs. But what are some of the challenges they face? It's access to affordable finance. And that was one of the things that we were sure that if we intervened in, then it could lead to the results of job creation. So what we have been doing is providing access to finance for small businesses. Now, these will be categorized as micro, small, and medium enterprises. You can get a minimum of 250,000 naira from the LSETF and a maximum of 5 million naira. And of course, interestingly, it started off as a single digit, right? Which is what it still is today.
So what is LSETF doing that the microfinance banks couldn't succeed at doing? Because microfinance banks have all but disappeared.
Exactly. So I'll tell you what we're doing differently. I emphasize two things. It's accessibility and affordability. So when you go to a microfinance bank, to be honest, it's more accessible than a typical commercial institution like the banks, right? Sure. So accessibility is easier. However, affordability is expensive because at the microfinance bank, they're giving you double digits that actually range up to 60% per annum, right? And that's prohibitive. Yes, the interest rate on whatever loan that you're getting. So it's expensive. So even if maybe documentation is not as much as a commercial bank. However, for LSETF, you only need a few things to access our loan because it was important to us that barrier to access is very minimal. So you have to have evidence of your LASRA card, as I already alluded to. You have to be a registered taxpayer. And this is interesting because, first of all, of course, it's taxpayers' money that we're giving to you. Yeah. But second is, even if you've not been paying your taxes, we use it as an opportunity to educate you on why you should pay your taxes. And then, of course, you need to show us one guarantor. So we do not use collateral as we know it, but we use social collateral, which is if you're getting up to 500,000 naira, there's one person who can vouch for you and say, you know what, this person has a business, right? And I am sure that if you give them this money, they will repay. Okay. So that is, in summary, what you require.
Okay. So that on that point, many churches, including ours, have ventured into trying to stimulate small and medium-scale enterprises, and we have given loans, soft loans, no interest, and a lot of the time we've not got our money back. So what guarantees do you have of getting your money back?
So I recall when we first started, a lot of people actually, sort of argued that we wouldn't get our money back because it's government, and oftentimes people feel this is their share of the cake. But I think that there were a few things that LSETF did right. First of all, we have a very strong governance structure that actually sort of signals how serious the Lagos state government is with this intervention. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if you had 10 people, you probably have 5 who are sort of genuinely willing to collect that money and repay. And what we found was very early on, we got a lot of success stories. So there was doubt. People thought, you know what, this is just another scheme. But by the time people started really accessing our loans and did not have to know anyone, did not have to go through anyone, found it a very simple and seamless process, they started to realize, well, maybe this is true. And then there was just an accountability that went around in terms of the signaling and the communication that has definitely led to us getting our money back.
That's almost like a miracle in this environment. And so we've been talking about the economic side of LSETF, and we're going to go on a short break now, but when we come back, we'll talk about the entrepreneurial side of it. How are you helping people to actually create wealth? So if you stay tuned, we'll be back with our guest, Ms. Abosede Alimi, in a moment.
Very quickly, globally, is the fact that small businesses employ more than 50% of the workforce, the labor force. So that has been a driver of all our strategic pillars of addressing youth unemployment. So across all our programs, our flagship, what everybody knows, everybody talks about, is what we call our Access to Finance, or the loan program, which is actually about 75% of our portfolio, where we must then provide access to affordable financing for small businesses. We do this by providing finance, capacity development, access to market. We provide as much support as is possible to small businesses to help them grow and expand their businesses so that they can employ more people.
Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we've been talking with Ms. Abosede Alimi, a director of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. And she wants to give away money. That's the bottom line. We're here today to find out what you need to do to qualify. It's not a gift so that you can go away on holiday or do something like that. It's so that you can, that dream, business you've dreamt about all your life, you can actually make it happen. And she said that they're prepared to give up to how much?
5 million.
5 million naira. Now, we've talked about the finance side of LSETF. Let's talk about the kind of businesses that people want to start, that you're seeing and that you're able to freely grant them funds for. What type of businesses are these?
So we actually have another program that's very focused on young people. Mm-hmm. Now, what we found was in the sort of early days in LSETF, we recognized that young people were not accessing our loans.
Okay.
And the reason is because you have to have had your business running for between 6 months or a year.
Okay.
And oftentimes, young people do not start businesses. So we actually started encouraging people who have been to vocational training, for example, to bring their certificates, and we'll give them up to 250,000 naira, all right, to start up a business. So this could be hairdressing, it could be makeup, it could be anything. And what we found, as you can imagine, is there's a lot of interest, of course, in the creative industry in that regard. But with regards to our training program, what we wanted to do differently was train young people for relevant skills. That's always the challenge. We didn't want to train them and they will go back home. So in doing that, we looked at what are some of the high growth sectors in Lagos. So you start to think about hospitality, right? You start to think about tourism, entertainment, construction, manufacturing, healthcare. So when you think about childcare, for example. And so we started to train them in those skills, and it almost guaranteed job placement, because those were relevant skills. So these are some of the skill areas that we see that young people are interested in, and we're doing something actively. We then have a third program, which is focused on innovation-driven enterprises. So this is where the entire digital economy of Lagos, as you know, we've got Yabacon and the entire ecosystem. We're stimulating innovation-driven enterprises. How are we doing that? If you were a young developer and you had a laptop, if you were working out of your home, you would have to provide yourself electricity. You'd have to provide yourself data. You then do not have any sort of peer mentoring or support. And so we developed a workspace voucher program where you can actually go into one of the existing hubs in Lagos. And this is one of the sort of unique things about how we do our program. We're not trying to disrupt. We're trying to support and enable the ecosystem. And so you can go to one of our partner hubs to actually use the workspace. So you can get workspaces from 3 months up to a year, depending on what level your idea was developing.
So you use the voucher
Absolutely.
to kind of pay for the space.
And we'll pay for the space, yes.
We have a lot of creativity in our system. And I remember once upon a time we had pitmans that used to do vocational training, and those all disappeared. So are you filling that gap?
Yes. So what we've done is, as much as some of the old ones might have disappeared, we have quite a number of new vocational training centers. And at LSETF, today we're working with over 21 vocational training centers, private vocational training centers, across different skills and trade areas. And what we're doing is, in some cases, we've actually helped with sort of upskilling the equipment. We've helped with improving sort of delivery by training the instructors. And then, of course, curriculum we have developed in collaboration with the vocational training centers, but also with industry. Because we're trying to ensure that we're training these young people for skills that are relevant to the industry.
Are you also ready to help with the cost?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you subsidize it?
So it's actually free today. So if you wanted to train in any of the trade areas that I've already mentioned, so we actually have 3 programs. We started off with a partnership with the United Nations Development Program. And now, today, we have 3 programs that actually support you, give you grants to go and learn a trade skill. So there's one with GIZ, which is the German Development Corporation, and then one with the United States Africa Development Foundation. So if you went to our website today, you can actually apply for certain skill areas, and we will train you for free. The trainings run between 9 to 12 weeks, and we also take it as a responsibility to place you in a job. However, to your earlier point, what we're finding is there's certain trades that are more freelance oriented. So young people come out of maybe learning videography or photography, right? Or social media assistants, right? And they figure, I don't want to go and work for someone, but I want to set up my business. And so we're seeing a lot of that. Garment making is another area where once people get trained, they can get placed, but sometimes they feel all they need is a machine and they can set up their business.
You know, the situation of the country where you look for a job and it seems nothing is coming out. I heard about LSTTF and I just picked the form. I remember that time when I came in newly, I didn't know anything. I learned all those things. Yes, I'm happy I made that decision.
This employable artisans coming out from the LSTF and UNDP program, it would make a huge difference to the economy.
Thank you, God bless you, and keep on doing the good work.
Now you talked about wealth creation, and part of wealth creation is creating jobs.
Absolutely.
Can you give us some success stories
Right.
of, I mean, without naming names,
Yes.
but what are the success stories that will encourage somebody that's watching this program to come forward and seek your help?
So we have quite a number. To date, we've supported over 11,000 businesses in Lagos with 7.3 billion naira. And from those businesses, they have actually together created 91,000 plus jobs.
Okay.
And again, it sort of goes back to our theory of change. But when you start to disaggregate that, you would find that they're creating between 3 to 9 jobs, but we have some outliers. We have a young man, for example, who we gave 250,000 naira because he was in university doing dry cleaning of lab coats. He just realized that, look, lab coats are white, students don't have time, let me take this burden off them. And he started to dry clean their lab coats. He came and took 250,000 naira from us and bought a washing machine. So went from hand washing to a washing machine to buying ironing boards, so he's not the only one ironing. He can actually hire other students. Out of that business, he actually hired 15 people. And he went on to set up 2 more businesses.
I started Dr. Clean February 21st, 2016. I got to know about it when there was a conference or a seminar organized by my student union association here in Lasut, whereby the executive director himself, the person of Mr. Akinwebode, came and was one of the guest lecturers, including Mr. Ojikutu, who is the captain president in Computer Village. So after speaking, and he made us to understand that there are a lot of opportunities for startup businesses to be able to get loan from the Lagos state government. And immediately he said it, that moment in the hall, I started registering online. And in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I got the award. So that was how I got it.
Something else that's very important to note is that the businesses also tend to be healthier after our intervention. So that statistics that says businesses don't last more than 5 years or whatever it is, we actually save you, right, to get to a point where you are stable enough, right, to hire more people. The businesses are also able to pay salaries from their revenue, and they're also able to sort of pay back their loans from the business.
My brother is an addict. He dropped out of school in 2015 and all he does is eat, smoke weed and drink alcohol. He gets violent and would destroy stuff just to get his way. He's been in and out of rehab 4 times, and my parents think it's some kind of spiritual force that needs to be prayed away. I'm afraid for their lives and for my brothers. Please help.
Family life is very important to me because I see the family as being at the center of God's redemptive plan for mankind. Every community has the family as its basic unit. It's the building block of any society.
Family life is a topic which hardly gets the attention it requires. For me, it addresses a lot of things we don't usually talk about.
So I bring this episode of Family Life every week, talking about one segment or the other of family life. We talk about marriage. How do you make marriages better? We talk about parenting. How do you deal with tough, difficult children? We talk about things like divorce, childlessness. We talk about adoption. We talk about a whole variety of things on Family Life with Wale Adefarasi.
I love the fresh perspectives that Pastor Wale gives while still focusing on biblical principles. I believe that if people know better, they will do better.
And so it's important that we give family life the prime of place and the prime of attention. At the moment, we are reaching 8 states of the Federation, and our goal is to be able to reach all 36 states. And so we're looking for partners that will join hands with us, support us in getting this out. Remember, as you join to support or to partner with us in making sure we're able to expand this program beyond our present reach, you are doing something for your nation. One of the problems that we have found is that some people do not have the auxiliary skills that go with running a business. They're good at writing code and they're developing applications and so on and so forth. But the bookkeeping part of it is what could actually bring the business down. Another thing is a lot of people don't realize that they are not the business, that the business is a separate entity to themselves. So their income they think is something they can use to pay their bills and so on, and then they get into trouble. How do you deal with that kind of problem?
So you're absolutely right. So precedent to actually getting access to our loan. So when I say access, you've gone through the application process, you've sort of received an offer, but before we disburse the funds to you, you must go through a training. Okay. So again, we're providing access to capacity. And so this is where a lot of people, for the first time, so what the data shows us is that up to 70% of our micro businesses said they had never been in any formal training, to your point, that had to do with running a business. So they had just been doing that on their own. So that's what we do precedent to you coming on board. But once you're a beneficiary, we actually have a business support advisory unit within LSCTF that sort of takes up that burden in providing you access to legal advice, access to accounting softwares and accounting advice, human resources, marketing, digital skills. So we have ongoing clinics once you become a beneficiary.
This must be costing you a fortune.
It is. And you know, that's the argument about the sustainability of the fund and why we are now bringing in more partners and thinking about what can we do to expand the pot of money so we can continue to serve all Lagos residents.
You're not a not-for-profit in a sense.
No, we're not. I mean, one of the sustainability that was built into the fund is the fact that it's a loan, so that when you pay back, it's a revolving fund, and somebody else
is there an
can
interest,
get it.
an interest element to the loan?
Yes. So today it's at 5% interest rate per annum.
Okay, which is very, very. So let's just do a little bit of forecasting. Where do you see Lagos State and youth employment in the next 10 years, for instance?
I definitely think that innovation is going to play a huge role in this, and which is why with the work we're doing with Lagos Innovates, and even the work that the Lagos State government is doing as well, it's about how do you identify businesses that are technology enabled, right? So that's on the one hand. But how are you also upskilling young people with the technical and technology skills, so the digital skills that these businesses need? Because it's complementary, and that's what we found. The creative industry as well provides a huge opportunity for job creation. But I think that technology is going to be at the center of all of that.
Now, we have a huge population of young people. I think it's about 70% of our population is less than 35 years old. So what would you tell them? Why should they come to you, and how can you help them? Just tell them.
So there are a few ways. You can come to us if you wanted to upskill yourself. And I think this is so important because even for university graduates, right? You've graduated university, you're not able to find a job. When you come to LSETF and participate in one of our employability programs, what it does for you is it immediately provides you with relevant skills that can get you a job. So perhaps what you studied wasn't relevant to accessing a job. We provide you relevant skills. And I mean, this is something that you can do by going to our website, which is lsetf.ng, or following us on all our social media channels, which is LSETF, really. So that's one. The second piece would be if you were a young person that had an idea. One of the things that we're trying to move away from is not just the money, but we actually have an ideas hub, where if you had an idea that was tech-enabled, you can go and register on that hub and go through a mentoring process. That actually
nobody will steal the idea from you?
No, nobody. Actually, it's set up in a way that as they help you, they can eventually fund you. Right? Because they've helped you to refine it and to actually get it to a point where it's viable, which is the whole idea. So we've got an ideas hub as well that you can register and be a part of and start to develop and hone your ideas. And then, of course, with our loan program, it's open. We recently launched a 10 billion naira fund with Access Bank, but that's focused on providing access to finance for women-owned and managed businesses. So that's something that is also available to young women in this case.
I begin to wonder whether affirmative action directed towards women isn't beginning to work at the detriment to the detriment of men.
I would argue that it's not. And the reason is, and the way I like to say it is, when you have a gap, you need to close the gap, right? So in closing the gap, you have to be deliberate. If you're not deliberate about that, what happens oftentimes is the gap continues to widen. And I think that though it seems a lot, the truth is all we're trying to do is close the gender gap.
Viewers, get in touch with LSETF. They're there. You can. That dream doesn't have to die.
Absolutely.
That dream can live. It can become great and mighty. Abosede, it's been a great pleasure to have you on The Heart of the Matter, and we look forward to seeing you some other time and to benefiting from some of the services that you provide.
Thank you very much.
Thanks ever so much. Viewers, it's been a pleasure bringing this episode to you, and we'll be back again with another episode next week. Until then, stay blessed.